after these elections, what's your assessment of where we stand?
Well, as you've pointed out, Steve, the margins are very close. However things end up shaking out with these undecided races still, the reality is that there is not a big difference between the numbers of Democrats versus Republicans in Congress, which leaves us with the practical reality. There are so many different challenges facing the American people, and we need leaders in Washington who will put their constituents' interests, the interests of the American people first, and find ways to work together to bring about common sense solutions to these challenges. The American people can't afford to have the next 2 years be completely locked up in inaction because of partisan gridlock and bickering. Now, I know this is hard to do. I served in Congress for a long time, but for every bill that I introduced, I always sought out Democrats and Republicans to work with on these pieces of legislation. So I know it's possible. It'll just require members of the House and the Senate seeing themselves as independents, frankly, not beholden to one political party or another, but solely beholden to the people that they represent, both those that voted for them and those that did not.
And what do you think of the message that the Democrats, your former colleagues in the Democratic Party, are taking from this? It does seem to me that they've been, it's this kind of energizing effect of, see, we didn't get repudiated. We're going to go full steam ahead with the same direction that we were going in, even though, as I said, a big majority of Americans say the country's going in the wrong direction.
Well, that's exactly right. And the unfortunate response that you're hearing from people like Chuck Schumer saying that they now have a mandate when the margins are hair thin just shows how out of touch with the American people that they are. They're out of touch with the reality that our borders are wide open. These are the kinds of things that they need to address. Democrats and Republicans need to work together to realize that these open borders are posing a threat to our country. Use the power of the purse in the House of Representatives to close these borders and make sure that those who've crossed illegally into this country under Biden's open door policy leave. And if they want to come back in, follow the laws and come back in, or try to come back in that way. Civil liberties, our civil liberties have been continually violated by overreach of our government. Congress needs to take action to peel back those provisions in the Patriot Act and in other parts of our laws that are allowing this gross overreach, like warrantless wiretapping of Americans and so on. And the other thing is easy. Stop funding the hiring of 87,000 new IRS agents who will only be harassing everyday Americans across the country and small business owners who are already struggling just to keep their doors open and the lights on because of the issue of rising energy costs and inflation and a challenged economy. There's a lot to do. They can do this if they put the interests of the American people first.
So what's really interesting about that is, really, I'm not surprised coming from you, which is why I think people sort of warm to the way you engage in politics, is those, certainly the first 2 points. That used to be the Democrat position, practical common sense, securing the border, certainly on civil liberties, but that's gone out the window. I mean, you can see why you left.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I really think, Steve, that there are Democrats in Congress, in both the House and the Senate, who agree with you and I and the vast majority of Americans who recognize that these are problems that need to be solved. Unfortunately, the leaders, these so-called woke radical leaders of the Democrat Party and their corporate media partners have created this culture of fear to make it so that they're afraid to speak up and do something about it. So I urge them, as I did when I announced and I left the Democrat Party, stand up, actually lead, and put the people who you have been charged to serve at the forefront of your mission and your motivation for going there to Washington in the first place and doing your job.
Exactly. Well, the trouble is, I think they're terrified of their activists, and you weren't. Very quick last question. Biden 2024, it seems like this has really emboldened that whole idea that he's going to run again. What do you make of that?
I don't know the answer to that. I cannot believe that most people who've been watching what this administration is doing would be excited about another 4 years under this administration, under the Biden presidency. I'm not a pundit. I don't know what the numbers say, but I just got to believe that people are ready for fresh new leadership. Yes. And I think they'll be looking to see how people lead over the next couple of years to make that decision.
Yes, fresh is definitely not a word you'd associate with President Biden, or indeed, we talk about Nancy Pelosi saying she's going to stay on. Anyway, we will watch it. Great to have you with us tonight, Tulsi. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.